Hi, and welcome back to Continual. It is time to add a little blood to your holidays and a little bit of gremlin into those elves on a shelf. Welcome in for Holiday Horror. I'm your host, Jim Nettles, and before we start diving into some of our favorite holiday horror, let's see who is bringing in their favorite tales of woe and desperation and, well, blood in the snow. Jeannie, you're up first.
Like a few bodies dropping around the tree, is there? Hello, everyone. I'm Jeanne Adams. I write paranormal romantic suspense, space adventure with my friend Nancy Northcott, and urban fantasy.
Selah?
Hey, I am Selah Janel. I write a little bit of everything, a lot of fantasy, horror, dark fantasy, a lot of lore and folklore-based stuff. So this is a great time of year for me.
Kiernan?
I'm Kiernan Kelly. I write mostly GLBTQ plus romance across the genres, but I also write horror.
Sumiko?
Hi, my name is Sumiko. I am the Bram Stoker nominated author of The Rat King, which is, of course, horror poetry. And I also write horror prose, science fiction, dark fantasy, and paranormal romance. Oh, and erotica. Yeah. Those things.
So I'm going to go ahead and take this one off the table very quickly. Now, we all have our arguments and our disagreements about whether certain things are or are not Christmas movies in and of themselves. We're going to assume Die Hard is a Christmas movie. Just get over it, Bruce Willis. We'll be fine. But before we get in and start going down that rabbit hole, my first question is this. What is your favorite Christmas horror movie and why? Jeannie, you have to pick one.
Oh, just one. Oh, man. That's evil in and of itself. Just to have to pick one. Oh, man.
We're going to be doing this all night long, so you can just start on the list somewhere.
Yeah, oh.
And I'm not the villain. I'm just the antagonist.
You are the villain. You really are, for asking that question. Honestly, it's probably got to be Gremlins. Sumiko brought that up before we even started. And it just for sheer horror that's funny. And that also has that underlying sort of kind of behind it too. And since I'm not really a slasher fan as much as I am sort of the funny horror. That one, and maybe I'd put Bill Murray's Scrooge right up there with it too.
Selah?
My gosh. I will echo Gremlins. I remember as a kid that it was an event when it came out. I made all my relatives get me like all the book and record sets from Arby's because I was like, and I wasn't even allowed to see the film. I was pretty young, but I was like so into the idea of it. So I had all the picture books, I had everything, years before I was allowed to see the movie. But if we're talking modern, I'll go ahead and take Krampus off the table. I think it's a really good blend of horror and kind of a quirky comedy that echoes kind of Gremlins. And it just really gives you that chaotic family vibe too. Like it's a very kind of honest look, I think, at the fact that a lot of families aren't like nicey nice happy at Christmas and people are just struggling to get along. And I really like the effects. I like that it doesn't take itself too overly seriously. Christmas horror, in terms of like stereotypical cliche stuff like toys and evil Santa and stuff, is really hard to do well. And I feel like it takes the legend of Krampus and does it in a way with like the evil toys and things like that that's done well. So I appreciate that movie immensely.
And we can tell I have a slight affinity for the horned one himself. Kiernan, what about you? What is your all-time favorite?
I am also a big Gremlins fan. I have been since it first came out in the movies, which I am old enough to have gone to see it in the movies. I also really like Violent Night It just tickles my little horror funny bone. And I really enjoyed watching that one. I think that's one of my new favorites.
Sumiko?
Yeah, everyone's saying Gremlins. Also Gremlins. Also, Gremlins, the new batch, the sequel. I really, really love that. And guess what? There is supposed to be a new Gremlins movie coming out in December.
Oh.
Yes. Yes,
Wow.
indeed. So Gremlins 3 is supposed to be coming out.
Cool.
Yes, so I'm excited for that. But I should probably pick another one. We did just see a really interesting movie over at Scott Bradley's like holiday Thanksgiving situation, horror movie situation called Blood Freak, which is a low budget movie with a turkey monster on it. And although it may not be my favorite of all time, it was hilarious and I do recommend checking it out. But as for something that I really liked, there's a movie called Puka about a haunted toy that goes out on the market. Quite good. So I would recommend that.
So, Selah, I'm going to hop to you on this one as we start diving around.
What up?
What up? And I saw a really fun article talking about this the other day to remind people that, in antiquity, 150, 200 years ago or more, often the stories we told around this time of year as we were coming into winter, were ghost stories. That was part of what was meant to cheer us up and to really liven up our holidays, right? Is nothing more than a little a little visit from the dead. So what is it for you? And, in the sense of where we are now, why is it such a blend and why do you find so much fun and joy out of horror movies, or, scary movies, scary stories? What is it about that with the holiday season for you?
I could give a dissertation on this. So, all
right, let me get my cup of tea. I'll be back. And then,
it's a few things. I think, as people, so this time of year, we're always focused on the light, which I think is important, light and the darkness and all of that. But part of that is because, it's the dead of winter and we are going up against the darkness. And I think part of it is important to acknowledge that, to make fun of it. I read an article once that said, one of the core tenets of midwinter celebrations was kind of, back in the old days, you weren't guaranteed to survive the winter. It was dependent on your food supply, it was dependent on a lot of things. So this time of year, the holidays are kind of smoke them if you got them kind of type deal. So I think embracing that darkness and echoing it back in terms of ghost stories, horror movies, whatever, is kind of our modern version of that. For me, growing up a pastor's kid and having my November through Epiphany in January chock full of every activity you could ever imagine, every moment of the day, between school and church and everything else. And then growing up and as an adult working in entertainment for a long time and doing seasonal gigs to kind of get extra money as an elf, as a talking animal, as dancing characters, as many things. I don't dislike Christmas. I feel very oversaturated with it in my life. So for me, having this blend of things that it isn't complete saccharine or commercialism or whatever, that there's this harder edge or acknowledgement of, hey, this isn't a great time of year for everyone, or hey, bad things can still happen. I think that's important. And to me, I feel seen. I like a lot of the lore that's culturally in winter, a lot of the folklore monsters and things like that. And I feel like that's always been a part of humanity. And especially in America, I think we've gotten away from that a lot. And I think it's natural for us to kind of re-embrace that. And, instead of, now we have Krampus in society, but we don't have like Grilla and the Yule Lads. We don't have Belsnickel anymore. We don't have Perkta, a lot of things. So in a weird way, horror movies is kind of our version of that, I guess, of kind of acknowledging the anti side of the light of the holiday season. And I'm here for it.
Kiernan, how about you?
I agree with everything you just said. Personally, for me, it's because the season is so drenched in this saccharine kind of sweetness, hallmark, constantly. I mean, every time you turn on the television, there it is in your face. That I enjoy that darker side. I like the juxtaposition of the horror against all that lightness and sweet, and that's what kind of draws me to it.
So, Jeannie, I'll hop to you.
Well, I think that Selah and Kiernan have hit on it quite well. And I think that, our forebears knew that the dark was just as likely to be deadly as it was to be happy. And because we're human and hopeful, we try to focus on the light. But those darker, characters in folklore, as Selah was talking about, they're still there. And I think we all need to acknowledge that even in, 2023 modern society, going home for the holidays, whatever holiday you celebrate, can be fraught with peril. Emotionally, physically, socially, mentally, financially. And having that horror movie that makes you, do this, or relieve some of that tension with a good jump scare. It can be cathartic.
Sumiko, how about you? What are your thoughts in terms of holiday horror? What is it about the idea of horror this time of year for you?
I think that the holidays are difficult for a lot of us because a lot of us have lost people. So every time you have a family gathering for the holidays, there's, and this happens more and more as you get older, there's people in your life who are there for every holiday gathering who are not there anymore. And, I think that for some people, starting around, Halloween, that there's like a whole bunch of different religious practices that feel like feel that the veil comes down, and then the people who have passed get to be closer to you and stuff like that. And I feel that for people who have lost people, that different types of ghost stories that are connected to the spirits of the dead and the appreciation of life, like classically A Christmas Story, the Dickens story, but just in general, they give people a feeling of that they're present with those who have gone, and that when they're gone, they'll be present with the people that are here now. And I think that, like, my mother, she's gone, but for her and me, I think that we like to watch a lot of vampire movies at the holidays because vampire movies made you think about immortality and the idea that you could just be with people forever and ever. I think that one of my favorite ghost stories, not a movie, about the holidays is Anne Rice had this book, The Wolves of Midwinter. And so this wealthy, well-nigh immortal vampire has decorated the whole town for the holidays because that's how he celebrates the holidays. And in this particular story, it turns out that the ghosts of the dead are actually present and they're at the holiday. A really, really lovely story. So I think it's that for me.
I had forgotten that story. I'm so glad you reminded me of it.
Thank you.
So, Sumiko, you kind of lead into one of the things I want to touch on is, for us, Charles Dickens' Christmas Carol, that is a classic story. It's a classic book. It's been turned into a lot of classic films. We've seen a lot of variations of it on TV. At one point, pretty much if you had a TV show, you were going to do your own variation of it. And you could pretty much count on somewhere in December, you're going to watch at least 3 versions of A Christmas Carol a night. why do you think that that story has become quintessential to us for the holidays, and what is your particular favorite version of it? So, Kiernan, I'm gonna start with you on that one.
That's that. Well, your last part of your question is the easiest part for me. It's Scrooge with Bill Murray. That is my absolute favorite version of the Scrooge tale, because I'm a huge Bill Murray fan and I just love that movie. But I think it hits a chord with us because it speaks to it speaks to our fears about ourselves, and exposing our truths to the light. The ghosts of Christmas, present, past, present, and future, just tells us that that there's still time for redemption. That there's, no matter how horrible we are as human beings, we can still make it right in the end. And I think that's a lesson that we all want to be able to believe in.
Sumiko, how about you? And you're on mute.
Yeah, I think that, there's a lot in there about the holiday bringing different people from different backgrounds together. And there's obviously a lot about classism in those stories, in that particular story of Charles Dickens. But let me say this. I think that the idea that everything you do impacts other people is a really important one in the story, because he has viewed himself as being a solitary man whose actions don't affect other people, but this family is literally dependent on him. And I think that it teaches people who maybe feel like isolated and lonely for the holidays that their actions and their deeds have an influence and an impact on other people, and that by engaging with the world and accepting your responsibility for your actions in the world, you can be a less lonely person. So that's sort of the moral to the story.
Jeannie, so what's your favorite and why?
Well, I'm with Kiernan on Scrooged. The whole thing with the antlers on the mouse, I'm just every year that one gets me. Although I have to say the George C. Scott version is and the Muppets. The Muppets are like right up there in my favorites of the Christmas Carol. And we have entire panels where we just talk about Alastair Sim and the Muppets and Bill Murray. And anyway, but yeah, the George C. Scott one, because he pulls off Scrooge so brilliantly. And like Sumiko said, I think, yes, you're right, Jim. Every show tries to form some Scroogey kind of thing. They either do that or Gift of the Magi, or both. But that connection across culture and class, and you see it in Scrooged too, where every single level of humanity is touched by someone who doesn't think they touch anyone or affect anyone. And it's just an odd and interesting layering that, sometimes we all write stories and somebody says, oh, the theme in the story is this. And we as the writer are going, wait, there's a theme? I didn't realize there was a theme. And I wonder sometimes if Dickens were to come back and see how many analyses of the story there were, if he actually did all that deliberately or just wrote a story. But there's so many things that are takeaways from it. As Sumiko said, about loneliness and about impact and about connection. I mean, Fred is his own whole, like Selah said about folklore, I could write a dissertation. Just that hopeful, that blind optimism. I live there, so I get along with Fred a lot. But yeah, when it comes down to your basic question, Jim, I think the Muppets and George C. Scott, those are my favorites.
Yeah, sometimes the curtains are just blue.
Yes, sometimes they are.
Selah, for you, what's your version of A Christmas Carol?
Oh, okay. So I have two. But first off, I agree with what everyone else has said about why it works, and why it's sort of hung in there so long. I also want to give mention, though, that I think Dickens, like this story, was probably the first real story that had like what we consider like modern Christmas traditions. So I think it hits a lot of the cozy, sweet spot, especially with Fred and the Cratchits and things like that. Going about your traditions and carols and prepping for Christmas morning and all that. And I also think it's important to recognize that, I mean, there's a lot of that theme of loneliness and interconnectivity that bleeds through into other Christmas classics. Like you could argue It's a Wonderful Life as a take on it, because you have, now George is an everyman, but we see his past, we see his present, we see a possible future. And then he goes through this big character arc change at the end and realizes how connected he is to everyone else in town. So, I mean, I think the themes resonate, even if it's not a straight adaptation of A Christmas Carol. It definitely shows up in other things in the holiday season. So my favorite versions, I freaking love, and I will champion this movie till I die. I love Scrooge. It's a musical. It's great. It has Albert Finney. Seriously, he goes through every range of emotion in this movie. It's brilliant. He's brilliant. What's his face? Alec Guinness is Marley. Perfect. Just perfect. But they tap dance on Scrooge's coffin. Scrooge goes to hell in part of it. It's great. It's just as British as you want it to be. It's wonderful. I just think everyone should see it at least once. I don't care if you're suffering through it. It's brilliant. I will defend it till the day I die. I also ran into a version from my youth I'd forgotten about today. So I'm from this wonderful time called the 80s. And cartoons back then were very different than they are today sometimes. The Ghostbusters channel has been uploading episodes of The Real Ghostbusters, which excellent. Like for the time, the writing is amazing. And it actually kickstarted a bunch of different writers into awesome careers. So there's an episode called Xmas Marks the Spot where the Ghostbusters are going back from a mission or something. They fall through a time slip. And I guess in that show, A Christmas Carol is like history. And so they happen upon Scrooge being harassed by the ghosts, and they just think, oh, ghosts. And they don't put it together. So they capture the three spirits of Christmas. And when they get back to like their reality, Christmas is like everyone's a humbug. Like Scrooge has published a book that's become the defining, book of the season about how Christmas is terrible. And then they have to revert it all. But what's interesting is Peter actually goes through his own character arc, which is pretty deep for a cartoon, about how he realizes his own feelings about Christmas and his absentee father kind of evolves and how he can find appreciation this season. It's weird. It's great. There's this whole sequence where Egon has to go into the containment unit to get the spirits back. And you see all the other ghosts they've trapped from season one so far. It's so weird and it's amazing.
Yeah.
Didn't expect that one, did you?
Well, you're actually kind of going to where my next question was running to. So you're going to have to think about this one. You're going to have to double dip now. So Sumiko, and I'm going to start with you on this. Thinking about holiday horror, right? We've seen a lot of TV shows, whether it's a standalone. I mean, one of my personal favorites is The Grinch, up into the point where, like that heart starts to grow. And I'm like, this is where we just cut this off right here, right now. When the heart's starting to grow, it's like, nope, the heart's going to go. The heart's going to go. But when we look at a lot of TV, sometimes it was just the holiday episode for the series. Sometimes it was just a standalone story. Sometimes it was made for TV type movie where we see the holidays. Sumiko, is there one of those for you, that stands out, something for you that just makes part of that holiday season, that's part of that TV holiday horror?
There was an episode of Supernatural that it was a Christmas episode, but it really was about Dean's feelings of parental responsibility for Sam, because so he's in the episode, he's trying to make a big deal out of Christmas for his brother while they're on the road, and like they're staying in hotels and they're just picking up stuff from like liquor stores that are in gas stations and stuff, but he's still trying to make it really special. And his brother at first doesn't really understand what's happening, but then remembers back to when they were little and how he was really trying to make it so that the magic of the holidays were still there for Sam, because Sam lost his mother as an infant, and because Dean really tried to protect his brother. And now I can't remember exactly what the present was that he gave him, but because I didn't have any time to look it up because you just made me go first.
Something from like a gas station. I can't remember.
It was something like a pocket knife or something, something ridiculous. But he wrapped it up, and I think Sam might have given Dean some porn magazines or something.
Something like that, that opening sequence too, like the cold open with the kid, is just so phenomenally perfect. Like, it's just great.
Yeah, it was actually very touching.
All right, Jeannie, how about you? What's your TV?
Well, as God is my witness, I swear turkeys could fly. It's not exactly horror, but if you think that through, it really kind of is.
I introduced my nephew to that this year on my phone and then had to explain it to him.
I giggled because, people were posting it on Thanksgiving Day. I just giggled all over again and just cracked.
I might have run it on our Continual channel.
I understand it, but as someone from Cincinnati, I've heard this 3 gajillion times, and people tell it to me all the time when they learn where I'm from on Thanksgiving. So
there is a really ancient, like 50 years old ancient television show called Home for the Holidays, and it's kind of an early version. It's a murder mystery. It's like it's almost like DOA. Like the guy knows he's going to die, and he tries to get his daughters to solve his murder before it happens. And Sally Field is in it. And a few years ago, I got on this kick about Sally Field, trying to figure out, where she'd gotten her start. I don't even remember why. And I stumbled across this movie, and it's set at Christmas, and everybody comes home for the holidays, and everybody's doing the fake sort of, oh, I'm so glad to be here. And it ends up to be this sort of stalking murder mystery that was really, really good. And I'm going to echo Selah and say there is a supernatural episode. It's season 1 or 2, I can't remember which, but it's a folklore version where this couple has taken Sam and Dean in, and then they're going to sacrifice them to the winter gods, to make sure spring comes again. And I love that episode. Whenever it comes on, I'm like, oh, I gotta watch this one. Even if it's like July, I'm sitting down to watch it because it's got that element of absurdity, but horror, and because they're just as cheerful as they can be. We're going to have a great dinner. We're going to have some pound cake, but we're going to murder you at midnight. But
you'll be well fed.
It's kind of got those elements of just absurd horror, humor, and this determination that, we've got to do this because, but we'll make it easy on you,
I did look up the other thing, and I guess that what Dean gave was the protective amulet that their father would wear. Yeah. And what Sam gave was actually a Barbie and a sparkly baton because he stole it.
There are a bunch of different ones from Supernatural, but that one was always the that one that Sumiko was talking about, and the one with the folklore one were the two that always kind of ping in my head at the holidays. It's like, oh yeah, we'll have pound cake.
So, Selah, what's your
Yeah.
TV special?
I feel like mine is a little bit more cozy horror, but so the original Adams Family is like my comfort show. I love it so much. I kind of stumbled upon it. Like my kid years till I was about 9 or 10. I lived in like Southern Illinois, and it would like, I don't know, play over local access or something. But I love that show, and to this day that's kind of my show through the fall and winter that I'll like fall asleep to if I'm having insomnia or something. And I love my parents, I love my family, but part of me really as a kid wanted to find out that I was like secretly related to the Adams Family. I love that version. They're just so sweet and awesome, and their house is epic and everything. But I really love the Christmas episode. I forget what it's called, but it basically Pugsley and Wednesday, are starting to question Santa. So it sort of ends up with every single member of the family dressing up as Santa and giving like Wednesday a doll and Pugsley an archery set, and the kids are onto it, and they're just kind of like taking the gifts like, okay. And of course at the end the real Santa shows up and decorates the tree, and they never see him, and it kind of, I mean, it hits like all the classic notes, but it's so sweet and it's so subversive to see it in that sort of gothic horror setting. And it really embodies for me that the series is, was supposed to be kind of the anti-sitcom compared to like a lot of the other families, but the family was so loving and so tight and so accepting of just everything, all this weird stuff. It was just perfect. I love that episode so much.
Kiernan, how about you?
Well, there are two. The first one isn't really horror unless you think of the guy's really sad, alcoholic, desolate existence before. But Night of the Meek from the Twilight Zone is one of my all-time favorite.
Oh gosh, I've forgotten about that.
Holiday shows with Art Carney, who, of course, he starts out by being this alcoholic, really degenerate, kind of down on your luck, living in the sewer type of guy, who finds a sack. And the sack has all these presents in it, and he goes around and makes life better for all the people in his neighborhood. I really love that one. And then from the newer stuff, one of my favorite episodes is from the Asylum, from American Horror Stories.
American Horror Story with
the Asylum. What you call it? I'm having a brain fart on the word that I'm trying to find, but it's the Christmas show is they have Santa, this crazy man who thinks he was Santa, who went on this killing spree. He's in the asylum and he breaks out at Christmas time and kills all these people. It was a great episode.
Well, and since somebody mentioned it, it is still one of my favorites that I always love to watch this time of year, from the X-Files. Which is the episode where he and Scully go to the haunted house, investigating it, poking all around. And it's Ed Asner and Lily Tomlin, who I just love watching both of them poking around as the ghosts in the house. And it's like, it is the nice, almost most pointless episode. But to watch that is just so much fun, and is one of mine you have to watch.
Yeah.
So...
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Jim.
Oh, no, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I would happen to think for those who like lore, it does change things, but it's a pretty decent, and the show itself is, but the Chilling Adventures of Sabrina has, I think it's called it's something Midwinter. But it's interesting because it plays with a seance. So you get that kind of ghost part of the season where she's trying to contact her mother, but it also is like one of the only properties I've seen try to touch on Grilla and the Yule Lads. They don't use the correct lore, but it still works in universe. So it's really fascinating how they spin it. It's a ride of an episode, and it does some really interesting things. So I would say that one as well is cool to check out.
So now let's dive back into the world of film, because since we can, and since somebody left me in charge, I have no idea who thought that was a good
Who
idea.
did that? Who thought that was a good idea?
I have no idea. So, what is that most ridiculous holiday horror film, but it's one that you love to see every time? For me, I mean, I hate to admit this, but because I don't know, it's 6, 7 years old at this point. Thanksgiving, for me, is just a ridiculous, fun mockery of every horror movie I've ever seen, and is nothing but a great ride. And it's one of those things that a friend of mine introduced me to. I always love to watch that movie just with the killer turkey. So, Jeannie, what's that ridiculous guilty pleasure holiday horror film?
Oh gosh. Bad Santas.
That's on our regular playlist. Yep.
It's just horrible. There are times when it's just exactly what you need to be watching.
Yeah, we showed that one year when we had everybody at the house on Christmas night. We're like, hey, y'all are going to love this. And nobody's come back to our house for Christmas since. I don't know what that says.
That's good to know if I ever need to get rid of people. The unwanted relatives. Oh, just show Bad Santas.
Selah, how about you? What's that guilty pleasure?
I feel like it's not bad, but it's not great. It's weird. Is A Christmas Horror Story. It's the one where William Shatner is a DJ and he's talking about like the town falling apart and stuff, and then you have these different story segments that kind of interconnect, I guess. There's like a changeling story that's pretty interesting. There's a random Krampus story about a statue that I think Kevin Smith did. I don't remember. That one was a little weird, but I mean, it worked, I guess. I just remember there's also like the Santa fighting the zombies, and then you find like look out at the end, like there's been some terrible thing at the mall, and I can't remember if like the mall Santa has gone crazy or something, attacking people, so he thinks like the people are zombies or what the actual hook is. But it's fantastic. It has no right to be as addictive as it is, but it's great.
All right, Kiernan, what's yours?
Well, you totally took mine.
You're welcome.
Sorry. Thanksgiving is amazing. There's nothing better than a killer turkey. I'm sorry, there's just nothing better. There's one that's I think it's coming out this Christmas that I'm kind of looking forward to, that I haven't obviously seen yet because it's not out yet. But it's the Elf on the Shelf horror movie, and I'm thinking that's going to earn a space on my playlist.
Yeah, that's really
because
horrible.
He turns into a little slasher. Yeah,
does not surprise me one bit.
Right. So that I think I'm gonna definitely go see when that comes out. I think it's I don't think it's out yet, but Elf on the Shelf, yeah, I think that's gonna earn a spot on my playlist.
Yeah. My loathing for Elf on a Shelf made its way into the book over my shoulder as well, but that's a different story too. Sumiko, how about you? What's that guilty pleasure holiday horror?
I don't know. I feel like I'm gonna get in trouble because people gonna say this isn't holiday or horror or guilty pleasure, but it is actually Bram Stoker's Dracula, which came out just before Thanksgiving. Yeah, I love that movie. People were all over it talking about Keanu Reeves' bad acting on other problems with it, but I so much, and it did come out right before Thanksgiving and is a Thanksgiving holiday tradition in my family to this day.
Love it.
And also my youngest niece is named Elizabeth after that movie. I actually
That's
got a
awesome.
family member that got named after it.
So
I have to correct myself, because I think the movie that I was thinking of actually is out, and I think it's streaming on Pluto and Tubi. So I may have to go watch that tonight.
Well, what's the name of it?
Elf.
Oh yes, I saw something about that.
Yeah,
Huh?
I think that's
You
what,
guys
I think that's
will
the one I was
remember.
thinking of.
Isn't there one that's like Santa Claus Vampire Slayer? Isn't there one where Santa's like a vampire slayer? I can't remember.
Yes, there is. And I'll look it up.
I was trying to find it on IMDb and I couldn't find it because it doesn't start with Santa Claus.
So, Selah, I'm going to start with you on this one.
Sure.
What is your favorite holiday horror film that does folklore well?
Oh God, I don't know. I'm trying to remember like everything I've seen at this point.
I love sending everybody to Google at the last minute.
Yeah, and that's what I'm
totally.
like, oh God. I even like poured over this because I knew someone was going to throw me a ringer. And I feel like as much as I've seen, I need to see a lot more.
Or maybe one that does folklore so badly you look at it and it makes you want to throw the,
I mean, no, sorry. The thing I think of in terms of like bad lore, bad presentation isn't a horror movie, so it wouldn't work, but it's a terrible movie.
now you got to tell me just because now we're all curious.
Yeah.
It's that horrible 1980s Santa Claus the movie with Dudley Moore. And
that is a horror.
That is.
It's a
it's horrible
movie. And God, it came out when I was a kid and I wasted, I can't believe I don't know if I drugged my parents to see that, but it was not worth it. They tried to do like Santa's background and I don't know. I think it's supposed to be like modern for most of it, but like the kids look like Victorian orphans or something, but there's television and Dudley Moore wants to be appreciated. So he takes the reindeer flying recipe and like gives it to a boy ad person. I don't know. It's so dumb, but it's one of those that I'll watch at like 2 a.m. and wonder why I'm doing it. In terms of things that do lore well, I'd say like I feel like Krampus does a decent portrayal, not exactly accurate, but in universe it works. It gives him a decent backstory, and it works. The ending is cool. It's a tight movie. I also like the Changeling story in Christmas Horror Story. It's really a different type of story for that kind of movie. Trying to remember all of it, but I know like the kid runs away from like his parents and they end up taking a changeling back, and like over Christmas they figure out he's not their kid or something. But it's really an interesting part of the movie. I may have parts of that wrong. It's been a while, but what does it badly? Oh, that same movie. I would say I don't quite get the Krampus segment of that movie. They try to make it like, I don't know, if you're too selfish, you'll turn into a Krampus. And I don't even know. Like there's this whole thing about a statue, I think. And like this girl who's over Christmas or whatever, the stereotypical teen isn't into Christmas, being selfish, and like her whole family is like chased by the Krampus, and it turns out it's like their relative, and then she turns into Krampus because she doesn't like the season. I don't know. It's just really weird. They tried.
They tried.
It's like a weird. Yeah, it's weird.
All right, Kiernan, how about you?
I think the one I like the least is Jack Frost.
Mm.
And the reason is mostly because of the title, because they called it Jack Frost. It's supposed to be Frosty the Snowman. It's not really Frosty the Snowman, but it's not Jack Frost either. And it's just confusing.
Which one? There's like, is it that the Michael Keaton one or the Killer
Snowman? No, not the Michael Keaton one, the horror one.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah.
The one with I think he's like a convicted murderer, and he's on his way to be executed, and I don't know, they have some kind of accident and he comes back as this murderous snowman, but it's not Frosty the Snowman, the killer. It's Jack Frost. It has nothing to do with Jack Frost. So that one's my least favorite.
Is there one you think that does the lore well?
Oh, let's see. I like the Krampus movie. I enjoy that movie. I think that does it fairly well. I think it does it pretty. Yeah, I like the Krampus movie.
Sumiko, how about
I feel
you?
like, sorry.
So I know that we're on the general subject of holidays, and I really want to say though, as far as a horror movie that does lore really well, it's a Jewish horror movie called Golem. It's so good. It's really, really, really good. So yeah, this woman can't have a child, and her child died, and people are attacking their village, and so she decides the thing to do is to create a golem in the image of her dead child. And it's really true to the lore because you create them out of clay and stuff like that, but eventually they just turn into like an unstoppable thing that will kill you as well. So I thought that was really, really, really done well. I'm gonna say that I feel like I like Jack Frost, even though I acknowledge that it's done horrible, horrible things to the snowman lore. Even though it's terrible and it's bad and I should not like it, I really do like Jack Frost. I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
It is fun. It is a fun movie. Yeah. Like on a slightly different but related subject of the snowman, Kate Bush has an album called 50 Words for Snow, and there's a song called Misty, and in the video for the song called Misty, there's this whole thing where in the song a drop of her blood falls on the snowman that she's creating, and the snowman creeps into bed with her, and they have a passionate night, although the snowman is very, very cold because it's made out of ice, and then he starts melting in her bed, and then she's out there crying like the character, because Kate Bush always has a character in these stories. So I feel like, honestly, the creepiest snowman lore movie I ever saw was the short film that they have as the music video for Kate Bush's Misty.
Jeannie, how about you?
Well, there's a very famous Scooby-Doo episode with Killer Snowman, and I was just trying to find out which one it was, but I can't find it. Which is so badly done, it's absurdly funny, as most Scooby-Doo is. One of the worst ones I've ever seen is a 50s cartoon of the Snow Queen from the Brothers Grimm. It's just awful. And that's one of my absolute favorite Grimm's fairy tales. Twisted, I know, but and so I ran again, one of these odd things I ran across. Oh, they actually made the fairy tale into a story. How cool is that? Oh, terrible. Absolutely terrible. And so, yeah, that would be my right there in the worst. I mean, honestly, if you're talking about worst use of lore ever, I'd have to just nominate Bad Santas again there too.
And Selah, I think I might have cut you off a minute ago.
I can't even remember what I was going to say. You're fine. You're good.
All right. So, Kiernan, let me throw this out there. Let's say you have somebody that comes to you and says, look, horror is not my thing, especially this time of year. Things supposed to be chipper and cheerful and happy and, Hallmark movies, right? What's that holiday horror film you're going to use to sneak them into holiday horror?
It's Gremlins off the table, because that's definitely the one that I would.
This is your answer.
I would proffer that first, because that's kind of like, that's the gateway drug. Because it starts out sweet and so lovely, and the little Mogwai is so cute, and oh my gosh, you just love him. And then he begins to multiply, and all of a sudden there are hairballs flying, and they have stripes, and they're in the mixers, and they're in the microwave. And the lady's shooting up the stairs on her little elevator thing. It's a great movie, but it eases you into the horror by being very, very sweet in the beginning.
Sumiko, how about you? And you're on mute.
I feel like they should just actually start with, Blood Freak. Just joking. Sort of. I'm gonna say this though. There's a whole bunch of really bad horror films on that level that are greatly improved by the presence of a dude with a couple of robots mocking them. So in that spirit, in that spirit, I would probably try to find something like Blood Freak that's on Mystery Science Theater 3000 and get them to watch that. I think that movie should be on it, honestly, but it would have been the best episode ever of Mystery Science Theater. I can't think of a holiday themed one offhand because I'm still stuck on Manos Hands of Fate, and also the one episode that they did about the Highlander 2.
That's a movie that does not exist.
They did. They didn't actually have that movie. They had a movie with Sean Connery's brother, and then they showed the one point where his career became better than Sean Connery's, which was that.
All I can say, I did see Highlander 2 in the movies.
Oh no!
In the theater.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, I was the only person that was there, and the only thing I can say about that was Sean Connery did show up for the payday. So Jeannie, what is it for you? What's the one you're going to use to take that person and ease them into holiday horror?
Oh, I'm like Kiernan. It's probably Gremlins, but Home Alone and Nakatomi Plaza are not off the table for sliding someone into the beginning of bloodshed and danger and bodies hitting the floor at Christmas. So,
well, I mean, definitively, Home Alone, which can honestly say I've never watched the entirety of. I've only seen pieces, but that is straight up horror because you are training a future serial killer. I mean,
precisely.
Yeah.
Thank you. That has been my adamant post about the movie. This is horror. This little kid is actually trying to kill people with really ugly ways.
Yeah.
And it might have been stolen from part of my life story.
And Hans Gruber is just the most excellent villain for Christmas to me. He kind of makes Krampus look like a slouch. Krampus has more time and grade, though. I will give him that.
Selah?
I feel like it depends on the approach. I feel like if they're being honest with themselves and I would catch them at a stressed moment, I could use Krampus because I feel like we all have those moments where we're just done with family. So that could work. Plus, it's kind of a horror comedy. The sarcastic part of me, and this is like my favorite movie of all time too, is like It's a Wonderful Life because of like the economic decline and just how much that George Bailey goes through. Because I feel like it depends on the year whether I find this movie hopeful or whether it's just a punch in my soul. So I never quite know how I'm going to react to it year after year. And I love this movie. Like, I love it. I also feel like if they're really adamant that Christmas and horror don't go together, I would pivot and do winter horror and do 30 Days of Night. because it has that kind of bleak winter atmosphere, that inescapable claustrophobia, and it's just a really, really good vampire movie. So I would have that on the back burner ready to go. And if all else fails, just him with a cozy Adams Family or something, I don't know, and then switch something midway through.
And I'm surprised nobody has slipped in a little bit of Tim Burton here.
Oh,
Nightmare Before Christmas.
Nightmare
Yeah.
Before
here's
Christmas.
my thing. I get why people like it. That movie is like 99% aesthetic and 1% plot of a man having a midlife crisis, and not a lot happens. And the music's great, the aesthetics are great, and I know people love it. That is great. They can have it. I think it's a beautiful movie, but yeah.
Well, before we get out of here, I'm going to throw an open question to everybody, and you can answer this however you wish. So, Kiernan, I'm going to start with you on this one. What's the one thing we haven't talked about with holiday horror, whether it's a movie, a TV show, just a theme, something you think we haven't talked about with holiday horror?
I think at least one movie that we haven't touched on that I really thought we would have is Black Christmas. From the, I think it was made in the 70s, maybe, or the early 80s.
There was a first version of that I want to say was early 70s, and there was a remake too, if I remember.
Yeah, the original was with I think John Saxon was in it, and Margot. Her name escapes me, but she played in Superman.
Margot Kidder.
Kidder. I just watched it not long ago, and it's still held up for me. I mean, the calls are coming from inside the house. It's just it cracks me up every time. And it's certainly not a movie that would work today with cell phones and with our technology. But back then, it was pretty scary when you went to go see it. That this guy is still in the house after you think, and plus she kills her boyfriend. Oh, sorry, spoiler alert. Thinking
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
That's one way not have to buy
it
you a
turns
gift.
out it's not. And then he's still there, and the calls are coming from inside the house. That just freaked the hell out of me when I went to see it.
Sumiko, how about you? What's the one thing we haven't touched on? And you're on mute. Oh, there
Yes, sorry. So I feel like it's been kind of like really centered around Christmas stuff. So we haven't talked about stuff like New Year's Evil, which is like, obviously New Year's stuff. And I did actually later think that I should have said Adam's Family Values.
Love that
would have been my entry horror movie, holiday horror movie, because it's actually Thanksgiving. Yeah.
That scene at camp is just wonderful.
Yeah, it is actually Thanksgiving, so that's a holiday.
No, I can't get Pugsley as a turkey out of my head.
Well, and talking about there's also the horror movie Hanukkah. Just if you need to slip that one in.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is a fun little film.
Well, we were talking about lore earlier, and I forgot completely about the Wicker Man.
Oh yeah,
which is pagan rituals and different
Yeah.
holidays and things like that. It's not really like Christmas, but it's holiday.
I would pay to see a holiday revamp of that movie. Like, this is what I want now.
A modern one, yeah. 'Cause
Yeah.
that one's super old.
Yeah.
Well, they did a remake of it, sort of.
We don't think about that.
Yes,
No,
I know we don't.
we shall not speak of that.
We don't talk about Bruno. No.
No, mm-mm.
All right, Selah,
Yeah.
get home.
I'll give you a Tim Burton. I will redeem myself. Beetlejuice. Or not Beetlejuice, sorry. No, Edward Scissorhands. Edward Scissorhands. I'm sorry. That is a charming kind of, not really horror, but not light and happy Christmas movie. I like that it has kind of the bittersweet ending. And I don't know. It's just pretty. I love Diane Wiest in it. She's one of my favorite people in the world, actresses in the world. And I mean, what's her face? Nona Ryder and Johnny Depp are great. I mean, it's just a fun movie. Vincent Price. I mean, just great.
You can't go wrong with Vincent Price ever.
Yeah,
No.
she's just fantastic in it. And plus, that ending scene with like the snow is just glorious. That would probably actually be one I would use as people's entry point, because I think that could be a good, very easy ride into Christmas horror. So Edward Scissorhands.
Well, before we slide off into this silent night, deadly night, since y'all have ignored that one all night, let's make sure everybody knows where to find you guys. Websites, social media, any particular books you think they need to have. So, Jeannie.
Well, you can find me a lot of the time here on Continual. You can find me at jeanneadams.com on various social media. And I actually have a book birthday today with the anthology, the Mercedes Lackey anthology. I have a story in this one. It hit bookstores around the world today. So I was very excited about that. And just find my website. You can find me.
And there's a Christmas on Outcast Station as well.
There's actually, I have several Christmas stories. Christmas on Outcast Station, which is set in space. I write that with my friend Nancy Northcott. It's police procedurals in space. And then there's Christmas at Canham Castle, which is a romance set in the Welsh Marches. And that's got witches in it. My story, and that one has witches in it. And ghosties.
Selah?
So first off, you can spell me SELAHJANEL. So I can be found at selahjanel.com, Facebook at author SJ. Selah Janel 99 on Instagram and Threads, Selah Janel on Blue Sky, and I guess I'm still on Twitter at the moment. I don't know what I'm doing there. So I have a short out that's Christmas horror called Candles on Kindle. That's about a group, a found family of survivors trying to celebrate Christmas during a zombie apocalypse. It's kind of near and dear to my heart. So I love that story. I also have a newish one out this year called Holly and Ivy. It's not horror. It's a revamp of a short I had out years ago, and I've retooled it as a novella. I do a lot of looking at some of the romance chick flick tropes of the season. My main character has her life fall apart in the city and moves back to her small town, realizes that her imaginary friend is actually a dryad who lives in the pine trees in her family's Christmas tree farm. So fun and hijinks ensue. It's fantasy. There's hope in it, but there's also very bittersweet melancholy in it. It doesn't negate the fact that Christmas can be difficult for people. So if you like lore, if you like kind of this play with light and dark, it's a title for you. Ebook is on pre-order right now. By the time this drops, it will be out. I'm waiting for the files to upload for paperback, so that will be out soon as well.
Kiernan?
I am usually on Facebook. It's Kiernan Kelly. You can also find my stuff at KiernanKellyBooks.com. And I have a short story dropping on the 8th that is a holiday story. It is a tentacle romance called Jingle Bells and Elder Gods. So look for that.
What a great title.
And I'm picturing a little Santa cap on the end of the tentacle. Sumiko?
You can find me at SumikoSaulson.com. And also I am in Black and Roots. That's zombies from the African diaspora that just came out on Mocha Memoirs Press. I am I'm in an LGBTQ horror anthology called We're Here that was put out by Blumhouse this year, and I actually have a story in there about a holiday that just passed. It's not really a holiday exactly. It's Transgender Day of Remembrance, which takes place on the 20th of November, when we remember all of the people who have died over the past year. I think that, you know, you can pretty much find me there. Oh, and go to dookiezines.com if you want to get a copy of The Rat King, because that's where that's. Thank you.
And I've had the pleasure of being your host tonight, Jim Nettles, and you can find me at jamespnettles.com, authoressentialsworkshops.com, the Speculative Fiction Academy.com, creatingprose.com, and of course, you're a Continual. And until next time, look out for those footprints in the snow, and we'll see you again soon.